You are late. We've been waiting for you. It's 11 a.m.
No, it's 10. Class starts at 10.
Did you forget daylight savings time?
I forgot to spring forward. As humans, we get used to our routines. We wake up at a certain time, we get sleepy at a certain time, we even get hungry at certain times during the day. We call this our internal clock, or our biological clock. It's rough on us when we experience a time shift or a time change. And that is what we're talking about today. I'm your host, Erica. This is Breathe English, and let's get started. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button and to give this video a like.
A brief history of time.
We all follow standard time, at least if we participate in modern culture. But it was not always this way. We used to have only hyper-localized time. So my time in my town could be a few minutes different from the time in a town close by. It wasn't until trains and railroads became popular in the 1800s that we started to organize our society on standard time. So the trains needed a more standardized time system for their schedules to work. And England was the first one to implement a standard time. And in the mid-1800s, Greenwich Standard Time was invented. So now we all live in a standard time zone. The United States has several different time zones. There is Eastern Standard Time, Central Standard Time, Mountain Standard Time, Pacific Standard Time, Alaska Standard Time, and Hawaii or Aleutian Standard Time.
Time travel.
When we fly somewhere, we often change time zones. If I fly from California to New York, I cross 4 different time zones. Or I might fly from Denver to China, so I would go from Mountain Time to Beijing Time, which is a 13-hour difference. This is when you could experience jet lag.
Jet lag.
Which is when you change time zones quickly and your sleep schedule is all messed up because you are now in a different time zone. So our internal clocks get all out of whack, and maybe we can't sleep when it's time to sleep, or we fall asleep when it's not time to fall asleep. The last time this happened to me, I was traveling in France with my mom and my brother and sister-in-law. So we went from Minnesota to France, which is, 7-hour difference. On the trip, I kept falling asleep in the afternoon, and it was like, I was like a rock, like I could not wake up. When we come back to our hotel room, like at midnight, 1 o'clock, I was wide awake. I could not sleep. My body was confused. It thought it is not time to sleep. That was definitely a case of jet lag. If you plan a call or video chat or meeting with someone in a different time zone, you need to discuss what time you will meet them. You can say, for example, there's a 5-hour difference between New York and London. Or London is 5 hours ahead of New York. Or New York is 5 hours behind London. Or you're 5 hours ahead of me. Or you're 5 hours behind me. And then when you're discussing the time, you should say the time in each zone, each time zone. You can say, for example, let's do 2 p.m. my time, which is 7 p.m. your time.
Daylight savings time.
Some regions of the world change their clock ahead 1 hour for half of the year. In the US and Canada, this is called daylight savings time. In the United Kingdom and the European Union, it's called summertime. The purpose of daylight savings time is to prolong or make longer the daylight further into the evening during the summer months. The first person to propose this idea was a bug collector in New Zealand named George Hudson. Rumor is that he wanted more hours in the day to collect bugs. The German Empire was actually the first to implement daylight savings time in 1916 in an effort to save energy during the war. The practice became more and more popular since the 1970s energy crisis. In the US, all states except Arizona and Hawaii observe daylight savings time.
We're going to a place where daylight savings doesn't exist. They call it Arizona.
To observe in this case means to follow a tradition. So you can observe daylight savings time. You can also observe holidays like observe Easter or observe Hanukkah. Every year in March, we spring forward or move our clocks 1 hour ahead. You can also say we lose an hour. And in October or November, we fall back. So just like the season, fall back. Or we gain an hour. Or we set our clocks 1 hour behind to return to standard time. Many northern regions of the world observe daylight savings time. However, regions closer to the equator, since the length of their days doesn't change much, there's really no point in following daylight savings time, so they don't. Are there benefits of daylight savings time? Originally, the idea was to get people to use less energy. So the idea was that people would be outside longer into the evening and therefore using less energy.
Daylight savings. They said it would help the farmers.
Today, we have so many modern conveniences that we don't end up saving that much energy. But there are some other benefits. Tourists who are out longer into the evening eating and shopping tend to spend more money. So I guess it's good for those tourist places. There are fewer traffic accidents since it's lighter during the rush hour period of the day. And people who suffer from seasonal affective disorder benefit greatly from having more hours of sunlight into the evening. Are there some disadvantages to daylight savings time? The first few weeks in the spring, when you spring forward and lose an hour, there can be some confusion. People forget to change their clocks. People can feel tired. Maybe they're less productive.
We spring forward, fall back. Or is it fall forward?
It's too confusing.
Also, daylight savings time can be confusing for people traveling to keep track of which regions observe daylight savings time and which don't. And as promised, let's do some idioms based on time. We have behind the times. Behind the times. This means if something is old-fashioned, not following the modern way of doing things, you can say it is behind the times. Or a person can be behind the times. My mom doesn't know how to text. She is so behind the times. Time flies. This is to express when you experience time as moving very quickly. So usually if you're having fun, you can say time flies when you're having fun. The big time.
The big time.
This is if someone becomes famous or very successful in their field. You can say they hit the big time or they made it to the big time. This is like the most professional or famous level of whatever. Sports, acting, music, research, what have you. To kill time. To kill time. If you're in a situation where you don't have anything to do or you're waiting, time is moving slowly and you want to get through that period quickly, you say you kill time or you're killing time. Sometimes when I'm waiting in line at the grocery store, I look at the magazines on the rack just to kill time. Usually I'm not even interested in them. I'm not going to buy them, but I'm just trying to kill some time until it's my turn at the cash register. Turn back the hands of time.
Turn back the hands of time.
So analog clocks have two hands showing the time, right? I can't do it with my hands, but two hands showing the time. So turn back the hands of time means to go back to the past. This is to express if you would have done something differently in the past. You can say, oh, if I could turn back the hands of time, I would have majored in something different in college. Or if I could turn back the hands of time, I would have tried living in a different city. And one last idiom, beat the clock. Not like this beat, but beat the clock means you have a deadline, you have to finish something by a certain time, and you're in a rush. So you say, oh, we're trying to beat the clock to finish this project in time. I didn't think I'd make it, but I beat the clock and turned in my essay a few minutes before it was due. And there you have it. There's some English to talk about time changes, time in general, daylight savings time. Let me know in the comments your experience with daylight savings time. Do you observe it in your country? Do you love it? Do you hate it? Is it confusing? Thank you so much for spending some time here on Breathe English. I'm Erica, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.